Okay, guys, this looks very serious. Look at him. We are going to review. All right, so find the GCF. We've got 35 and 7. So remember, the first thing we do is take 7, and our only factors are 1 and 7. Does 7 go into 35? It does. So 7 is our GCF of the numbers, and then we take the smallest exponent. So it's just 7t. All it asked us to do was find the GCF. It did not ask us to factor, so we stop. Find the missing factor. So this is a little bit different. This one's saying, what do I multiply 6 by to get negative 18? So 6 times what equals negative 18? If I can't remember, I'm going to divide by 6, and it would be negative 3. Then I've got x cubed times what, and it has to equal x to the 7th. So again, if I don't remember, I'm going to divide, and I need x to the 4th, because remember, we add exponents when we multiply. And the last thing is y to the 5th times what gives me y to the 6th. I need one more y. So it's just like, this is my GCF kind of thing. What's my leftovers? It's not really, but it's kind of the same thing. What's the difference? Whoo, look at that. Factor means I'm going to have GCF times the leftovers. Solve means I'm going to have x equals and two different numbers or the same number, or maybe just one number. I'm going to have some numbers there. So on this, both of them, I need to factor. I'm looking for the factors of 14 that add to negative 9, negative 2, and negative 7. So x squared minus 2x minus 7x plus 14. Do my grouping, pull out an x, x minus 2. Pull out negative 7, x minus 2. My GCF, my greatest common factor between those two, is x minus 2. And what do I have when I pull that out? X minus 7. Because it said factor at this point, I stop. This is my factored answer. Factored means what did I multiply? Solve, however, means first you're going to factor. So I just did that. If you notice, it's the exact same problem. So it's x minus 2 times x minus 7, but it has equals 0. So solve means I have x minus 2 equal to 0. So x would equal 2. X minus 7 would equal 0. So x would equal 7. So you have to know the difference. Again, just like I said on the last video, if it says factor and you give me x equals, you're going to get it wrong. If it says solve and you stop at x minus 2, x minus 7, you're going to get it wrong. You need to know what I'm looking for. Okay, factor. See, look at him. He's thinking, ooh, what do I do? Remember, the first thing you do is look for a GCF. Here's a hint. You have squares, cubes, squares. You got all sorts of stuff. So anytime it's weird, GCF is definitely where you're going to start. 2, 16, and 8 all have a 2 in common. My smallest exponent on m is 1, and my smallest on n is 1. That is part of your answer. Now, what's going through your head is, what do I get when I divide by 2mn? So 2 divided by 2 is 1. M to the third over m to the first is m squared. N squared over n is 1n. Negative 16 divided by 2 is negative 8. The m's cancel. I have an n left. 8 divided by 2 is 4. M's cancel. N's cancel. I would try the GCF if this was normal, but look, it's m squared n to start with, so that tells me we don't need to do the big X. We are done. GCF, leftovers, okay? That's what factoring looks like. All righty, I'm going to always start with the GCF. So what do these two have in common? A 2. And I have x to the 4th minus 16. Now you are far enough along that you know what you have to do now is double, triple, check. So the second thing is how many terms. If you have 2 terms and you've already taken out a GCF, you're looking at a difference of squares. Do I have 2 terms with a minus and 2 perfect squares? I sure do. So I leave the 2 and I change this into a plus and a minus. What is the square root of x to the 4th? x squared. Remember, that means x, what squared gives me x to the fourth? I'd be multiplying these, so it's going to be x squared. What's the square root of 16? 4. Now at this point you might want to stop, but here's your red flag. You have squares. If you don't have squares left, the only thing you could have done is forgotten a GCF, but you already took that out. So if you have squares, we're going back to 2 terms. Is this a difference? No. Is this a difference? Yes. Are these both perfect squares? Yup. This is the square of x, and this is the square of 2. So I have to leave the 2. I have to leave the x squared plus 4. I'm going to take this and break it down into a difference of squares, plus and minus. So what's the square root of x squared? X. And what's the square root of 4? 2. I am finally done. We had to soar like an eagle to get all the way to the end of that one. All right, factor. Do you think eagles ever smile? I don't think they can. Look, their beak is kind of frowny. That's so sad. I don't want to be frowny. 3 terms, 1, 2, 3, no GCF, so I'm going to go to the big X. 21, looking for 21, that adds up to 22. My numbers are going to be 1 and 21. And that by 22 on the bottom is what I meant, 22. Whoops, I'll just erase that because that looks bad. 22, looking for this middle number. So I have a squared plus 1ab. Remember, you got to include both the variables. Plus 21ab plus 21b squared. I'm going to go to my grouping, take out an a. I have a plus b left. Take out a 21b. And the 21 and the b cancels. I have a, 21 cancels, and I have a b left. So my common factor is a plus b. My leftovers, a plus 21b. When there's no square, the only thing I can look for is, did I forget a GCF out of either one of those? The answer is no, you rock. All right. Now, this guy's going, follow me. Let me show you how to factor. This guy's going, oh, factor. That sounds like a lot of work. And he's going, no, it's fun. Factoring is fun. That should be our secret phrase, guys. Factoring is fun. GCF, 5, 3, 15. Absolutely not. 5 times 15 is 75, and we're looking for -3. Is that right? Wow, that's pretty rough. I'm going to go over here. 1 and 75. Okay, that doesn't work. How about 75 divided by 3? 3 and 25. That does not add up to 3. 75 divided by 5 and 15, that does not add up to 3. I'm actually checking to make sure I didn't do that wrong. 15 times 5 is 75. Let's see, 75 does not divide by 6. Does it divide by 7? No. 8, no. 9, no. 10, no. 11, no. 12, no. 13, no. 14, no. I think this one is actually prime. Okay? Don't write that down until you have done the big X. So you have to write the big X. Then you have to list all the factors. Do any of them add to equal 3? The answer is no. Then you can write prime. Remember, prime means we cannot factor it at all. All right, 1, 2, 3, 4 terms. I'm going to be honest. The first thing I'm going to do is go to 4 terms. 4! Anytime you have 4 terms, you group. So I'm going to take out a c squared. That leaves me with 3c minus 1. I'm going to take out a -4. That leaves me with 3c minus 1. What do these two have in common? 3c minus 1. What do we have left over? C squared minus 4. I'm going to the red pen because there is a squared here. If I have a square left, that's a red flag. Can I do something else? Is it a difference of squares? Difference squares, it sure is. So rewrite 3c minus 1. Don't lose that. Break this one up into a plus and a minus. What squared gives me c squared? C. And what's the square root of 4? 2. I don't have any squares left. Did I forget a GCF? Nope. Yeah! I feel like, eagles don't caw. What do eagles say? I don't know. He looks like he's going, caw, caw. Oh my gosh, maybe eagles just like to have their mouth open. All right, look at your directions. Solve. That means, number one, it has to equal 0. It does not. So I'm going to move this 4 by subtracting it. So I have 4x squared minus 4x minus 8 equals 0. Step 2, is there a GCF? There is. What is it? 4. So if I factor out of 4, I have x squared minus x minus 2 equals 0. Step 3, there's 3 terms, so I'm going to try the big X. So my big X would be -2, trying to find -1, and my numbers are going to be -2 and 1. Keep the 4. X squared minus 2x plus 1x minus 2. Keep the equals 0. We're going to do grouping here. Keep the 4. Okay, I'm going to pull out an x. I have x minus 2. I'm going to pull out a 1. I have x minus 2. I have equals 0. Keep the 4. What do those two have in common? X minus 2. That's my GCF. Leftovers, x plus 1. Don't lose the equals 0. Now, because it says solve, we're going to set each factor equal to 0. Here's your first factor. Can 4 equal 0? No, waste of your time. Here's your next factor. X minus 2, does it equal 0? Yup, when x equals 2. And then here's your last factor. X plus 1 equals 0 when x is -1. So these are your two answers. This one doesn't tell you anything, but if it had had an x, it would have an answer. On solving, you have to have an x for an answer. All right, solve. Remember, step 1, it has to equal 0. It does not. So we're going to subtract 8x. I can't combine these two. I have 4x squared minus 8x, and that equals 0. Step 2, is there a GCF? There sure is. Take out a 4x. I get x minus 2 equals 0. Step 3, I have two terms, so I'm going to go to difference of squares. So looking at this one, is it a difference of squares? No, it's a difference, but those aren't square. So that leaves me down to step 3, which would be 4. Set each factor equal to 0 and solve for x. So 4x equals 0. Look at this time, it gives me an answer because I have an x. X is 0. If I just had 4 there, it wouldn't have given me an answer. Set x minus 2 equal to 0. X is 2. Ooh, he's studying that to see if we did it correctly. Look, he's given me the I. These are the steps I need to know. Apparently they come out of his nose. All right. Last slide, we are going to solve. Look, he's so sad because it's his left side, or because they're extinct. It doesn't, I don't know. So we're going to subtract 24x from both sides. I have x cubed. I have 2x squared. I have minus 24x, and that equals 0. So step 1, it has to equal 0. Step 2, is there a GCF? There is. How did I know not to go to the big X? Remember, for the big X, it has to be ax squared plus bx plus c. It has to be x squared. I've got an x cubed. That's your hint. I'm going to take out an x. I have x squared plus 2x minus 24 equals 0. Step 3, my leftovers have 3 terms. So now I'm going to go to the big X. Are there factors of -24 that add to 2? And those factors would be 6 and -4. So keep the x, rewrite this leftover part as x squared plus 6x minus 4x minus 24, and keep the equals 0. So here's the x. On this one, I take out an x. I have x plus 6. Here I take out a -4. I have x plus 6. Keep the equals 0. Keep the x. My common factor here is x plus 6. My leftovers, x minus 4 equals 0. So because my directions said solve, I'm going to set each factor. There's x as a factor. There's a factor of x plus 6. And there's a factor of x minus 4. I'm going to solve each one of these. X equals 0 is solved. That's one answer. If x is 0, if you put 0 in here, 0 cubed is 0, 2 times 0 is 0, and that equals 0, it works. This one gives me negative 6. So go back up here. Negative 6 cubed. Well, I don't know what that is, honestly, guys. 216? Yep, 216. So that would be 216. This would be 2 times 36, which would be 72. Does that equal 24 times negative 6? Oh, this is negative 36. Okay, because it wasn't going to work. So 216 minus 72. This is negative 216. Oh my gosh, I didn't even know what I'm doing. It works, just trust me. This one, x minus 4, add 4, we get x equals 4. So there are 3 answers, okay? All right, I took a little bit of time on that one. 16 minutes still, that's pretty good from the beginning. You need to know the difference between factor and solve, okay? Know those. Be square, be there, be done.